Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Hitting the Mark with Mike Conley. Today, I would like to share with you a word. We don't hear this word too much anymore. Now and then we do, but not a lot. And the word is redeem. According to Webster, redeem is you liberate from captivity an obligation by paying a ransom. When you atone for someone, you make amends for your error. In this world, there are approximately 170 different religions. And they all have some form of what we would call redemptive analogy. I would like to give you two examples of this. Perhaps you've heard these. In China, they have a 4,000-year-old pictograph script. And it's a picture of a lamb. And above the lamb, in the first person singular pronoun, is I. And this means that righteousness, the way it actually reads, is I under the lamb. This pointed the Chinese people to the redemption of Yeshua, the righteousness bestowing the Passover lamb. We have just passed the beautiful experience in the spring of the Passover, and now we are heading for Pentecost. And the whole idea of the redemption of all mankind is just beautiful. One more example. In India, they have a tree. Beautiful picture of a tree that is upside down. It's from an ancient text called the Indius Vitus. And the roots of the tree, being upside down, are in heaven. And the branches cover all the earth, bestowing fruit for mankind. The trunk has a huge gash in it with the sap flowing out, picturing the shed blood, the healing of the entire world. Almost every religion has some redemptive analogy, some redemptive quality, except one, and that is Islam. Have you ever wondered how many different religions, how did they all begin? Since the time of Abraham, there's been about 15,000 different religions, and usually emanating from a charismatic individual who is claiming something, but there are no witnesses. It's what's called a singular revelation. An example of this would be Joseph Smith. We've all heard of the angel Moroni and a set of golden tablets, and there just happened to be, at the time this happened, a dictionary there that Joseph Smith could translate from Egyptian into English, because the writing on the tablets was not in English. And there were no witnesses to this. But yet, Mormonism was born, and it was on its way. Another example is a man named Marshall Applewhite, who in California started something called Heaven's Gate. They all decided they would wear black Nike tennis shoes. This started in a place called Rancho Santa Fe. And he gave these people pills and told them if they took them, they would ascend to heaven. Who was involved in this? People with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, lawyers, doctors. And, you know, the question becomes, we can at times be very gullible. And sometimes we get so gullible that we actually act destructively. All those people took those pills and died. 40 of them. Now, in Joseph Smith's instance, and in Marshall Applewhite, the lie cannot be checked. That's the issue here. And the next idea we want to look at is Islam. Islam is very, very much like Joseph Smith and Mormonism and all the others. It was based on the testimony of one man, and it had mutually exclusive claims. Let me talk about this for a moment. If you were a Christian and you wanted to become a Buddhist, you would ask the Buddhist leaders, do any of the claims of Christianity fit into Buddhism? And they would say no. Anything in Christianity, if you come over to Buddhism, is out. So everyone's religion has mutual exclusivity. And once again, you come into the idea that you cannot check the lie. There was, in Islam's case with Mohammed, he was in a cave on Mount Hira. And according to him, and again, there were no witnesses. The angel Gabriel came to him. And all of a sudden, here we have another charismatic leader. The lie couldn't be checked, and Islam was on its way. In one sense, Muhammad actually, through the Quran, redefined God. What really happened in that cave? It's an event that took place with no witnesses. We don't know. No one does. The Almighty, the Creator of the universe, keeps His promises. But Allah, Islam's God, cancels promises that were made earlier. Yeshua's death atoned for the whole world, providing worldwide redemption. But Islam, according to the Quran, says that Yeshua did not die and rise again. And God's requirement for atonement, absolving the world of its guilt, is denied in Islam. There were, at one time, 3 Muslim writers, and they were accusing the Christians of worshiping 3 different gods. According to the Quran, God had intercourse with Mary, and out of that union came a son named Jesus. Now, I know that not all Muslims agree with or understand the core problems of Islam, because many, many Muslims do not read the Quran. So again, the issue is we cannot check the lie. There are certain events that happened in the Quran that we need to take a look at. For instance, in 89 chapters, 27 different times in 89 chapters, the Exodus is repeated. That's every 3 1/3 chapters, it talks about the Exodus with no mention of the Passover. Adam and Eve, according to the Quran, didn't sin in an earthly garden. They sinned in paradise and they were cast to an earthly garden. In the Quran, Surah 7, 19 through 24, and 20 through 25, Adam and Eve were cast to earth. In the Quran, Surah 7, verse 24, it says, "Get you down to earth for a while, and that will provide your dwelling." In the Quran, Surah 28, 5, and verses 6 through 8, Esther is associated with Pharaoh. And also in the Quran, Surah 2, verse 249 and 250, Mohammed confused King Saul with Gideon. When you look at the Quran, it is an absolute mess. The Jews of Medina, up on the premise of the Arabs, wanted Muhammad to show that he was in fact a prophet. But the Arabs said, look, we don't know anything about prophets because we worship over 350 different idols. If you say you're a prophet, you need to go to the Jews. They know about prophets. And we need to be reminded here that for centuries in Mecca and Medina and in all of Saudi Arabia, the Jews and the Arabs lived together in peace for centuries. Well, the Jews told Muhammad that, I'm sorry, but you are no prophet. Right now, in our present time, the ground is heating up under the feet of Islam. I want to cover a couple of things. There was a gentleman named Al-Nader, and he scoffed at Muhammad. There was another man named Aqba, and he was taken captive during the Battle of Badr. Aqba said to Muhammad, "And my little girl, who will take care of her?" And Muhammad said, "Hell fire, and that witch, that persecutor, that unbeliever in God and his prophet and his book," and he killed both of them. The third person was a poetess named Asma bint Marwan, and in her writings she chided the men of Medina, saying, and I quote, "You gather together like seduced women around that treacherous stranger from Mecca." She was killed. There was a 100-year-old poet named Abu Afaq. He was a goldsmith and he was killed because he publicly embarrassed Muhammad. Another poet named Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf: "Kill any Jew you are able to kill." That was a quote that she quoted from Muhammad. Now, all of what I just showed you came from multiple Muslim sources. And we know for a fact that Mohammed presided over the beheading of 500 Jewish men, 5 at a time. So you see, we now live in a world that is being heavily influenced by Islam. Peaceful Islam. And in the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verse 22, it says, you know, you worship what you do not know. A gentleman named Reza Safa, a servant of Yeshua, an ex-Shiite radical Muslim, said this: Islam is not a philosophy like communism, but a theological ideology. And of course, we have two choices. Do we rely on our personal knowledge of Muhammad or the Quran, or do we want to rely on 1,400 years of recorded history? If Islam is so peaceful, why was Muhammad in his lifetime involved in over 66 battles? And in every campaign, they killed anyone who did not bow to Islam. Why, if Islam is so peaceful, why do so many verses in the Quran talk about killing the infidels, being those who resist Islam? If it is so peaceful, why is it that not one Muslim country allows free speech or freedom of religion? The truth is recorded in history through what Muhammad did during his life and what is in the Quran. You see, we are being heavily influenced by many religions that had their start, and it started with one charismatic leader. He comes up with an idea. No witnesses. Now I want to read you something from the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And I want you to get an idea that's behind where I'm going. This is Exodus chapter 20, verse 16. And it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning that there were thunders, lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceedingly loud, so that all the people that were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the far part of the mountain. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. And the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him by a voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount. And the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. You see, there is only one event that took place a few thousand years ago where there was not just one person with an idea with no witnesses. I want to give you an idea of how many people were there as witnesses to that event when the Almighty, the Creator of the universe, came down on Mount Sinai. This is from the book of Exodus, chapter 12, starting in verse 37. The children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, aside from children. Also, a mixed multitude went up with them, and flock and cattle and livestock. So you see, 600,000 people, not counting women, children, elderly, and all the other people that left Egypt with the Israelites. We are talking somewhere very close to possibly 3 million people. Not a guy that claimed golden tablets. Not a guy that sat in a cave and claimed to have a visitation from Angel Gabriel. It was the Creator, the Almighty Himself. There were possibly 3 million witnesses. In almost every other religion of the world, you cannot check the lie. But you can when the true Creator of the universe, the Almighty, came down in front of approximately 3 million people. I hope my purpose in doing this is to get you, if you are non-Muslim, and you have Muslim friends, to share with them these truths. If you are Muslim, I would ask you to get into the Quran, and you will find out that it is not a holy book. At best, it does nothing more than plagiarize the scriptures. I hope this has been interesting. I hope that you will do your own study, look into the truths of the scriptures, and learn about Islam. You need to know the truth about Islam, whether you're a non-Muslim or a Muslim. I hope that you have a blessed day. If you don't know the Lord Jesus as your personal Savior, I would ask you to do 3 things. Number 1, accept the work that He did on the cross on your behalf for your redemption and your atonement. Number 2, believe in that name of Yeshua that brings salvation to the world. And upon believing, number 3, confess Him with your mouth to a world that needs to know the truth that is based on approximately 3 million witnesses. Have a blessed day, and I hope the Almighty richly blesses your life. Amen.